Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Steve, and in today's episode, I'm taking a look at a brand new watch and a watch that I'm falling in love with. It is the Tissot PRX. When I first heard about the PRX, I didn't know it was a re-release of an older model. It was only until I went to Tissot's website. Is it Tissot or Tissot? Anyways, I was like, oh, it's actually a re-release of the watch. Now, if you don't want to sit through the review, spoiler alert, this watch is worth the $375 asking price. It could be even worth more, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and flip that camera. Just take a look at this watch. Take a second, look at this watch overall, and enjoy. Without getting too close into it, without analyzing it too much, just look at how beautiful this watch is. Integrated bracelet, the brushing, the polishing, it just looks so nice, especially for the price. The price for this watch, MSRP, is $375. You can talk down a dealer, get 10% off or so, but this watch is hot right now. Just looking at all the videos online, just the amount of views I've gotten from the unboxing, this watch is the real deal. So let's take a look at the overall construction of the watch, and then we'll get into the specifications. So the watch itself comes mostly vertically brushed. There's vertical brushing on the case, on the bracelet, but as you can see, there are areas of just this high polish. So we have a high polished bezel, we have some high polished edges on the side, and even take a look at the bracelet. And this is something that really, it's so attractive when it comes down to the bracelet. So you have this bracelet, and it's mostly these flat links, vertically brushed, but take a look at the edges of the links. You have a very high polish on the edges of the links, and that it's going to play with the light so nicely. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on the wrist just to show you guys. Take a look at this. Take a look at this and how it plays with the light. So it's on the wrist. Those flat links reflect the light very nicely, and then you get that edge of polishing. It plays with the light so nice. It's very flashy. You're going to see it from across the room. And with this bracelet being brushed, it's amazing how it reflects the light. It just looks so premium, with it being a very inexpensive watch. I guess relatively inexpensive. $375 is still expensive for a lot of people, but relatively speaking, this watch looks like $1,000. So, all right, let me go ahead and take this off here, and we'll get into more detail about the watch itself. So we have a 40 millimeter diameter, a 44.5 millimeter lug to lug, a lug width of 12 millimeters, and a thickness of about 10.4 millimeters. So it's very thin, and that's thanks to that quartz movement on the inside. We'll talk about that a little later. The 3 o'clock, we have the crown, and it appears bead blasted with a high polished T. I think it's around 5 millimeters in diameter for the crown. So you're not gonna, it's gonna be a little bit, not hard to operate, but could be a pain if you have bigger hands. But once you set this, like I said, it's quartz. You don't have to worry about it again for a while. Weighs in at 127 grams, so it's fairly light. And this watch does offer 100 meters of water resistance. So to get 100 meters of water resistance without a screw-down crown, without a screw-down case back, it's very impressive. So let's talk about that movement real quick. Inside is a 3-jeweled quartz movement by ETA, the F06.115. Push-pull crown. In the first position, you can change the date. And in the second position, you can adjust the time. It hacks, obviously, so you can change the time. Very smooth with the hands as you're rotating. The crown feels good. Doesn't feel wobbly at all. So let's go ahead and adjust the time a little bit here. There we go. Pops in nice. Ticking away just fine. The battery life on this watch is, I believe, 5 to 8 years, and it does have an end-of-life indicator. And with the end-of-life indicator, basically what that does is that seconds hand will jump every 4 seconds. So you'll know that you have to change out the battery. Batteries for this thing are a couple of bucks. So every few years, just pop in a new battery, you'll be fine. Now, this watch was originally designed in the 70s, so it makes sense for it to be a quartz movement. I actually like that a lot. I don't mind having quartz movements in my watches. One of my favorite watches of all time is my Citizen Skyhawk. That watch has a solar-powered eco drive movement, atomic controlled. They work, and they work well. They work all the time. You don't have to worry about servicing. And it's nice, don't get me wrong, it's nice to have an automatic movement at times, but with this watch, I like the design having it with a quartz-based movement. And like I said, it makes sense because it was designed in the 70s. It just fits with the overall aesthetic. Now, when it comes to that seconds hand, as you can see right now, it is hitting all of the indices. But the precision on this watch varies. Like right now, it's hitting them, or it's actually just missing them just by a little bit. It's something that doesn't really bother me at all, actually. I don't mind it missing the indices. I'm not looking at it that closely. It's not going to offer that smooth second sweep, so it doesn't really bother me at all. For the majority of the time, it hits all of the indices. At least it comes close to hitting all of the indices. So it shouldn't be a problem if you're kind of a stickler for that type of thing. As far as the ticking goes, it's actually very quiet, so you don't have to worry about this keeping you up at night, hearing it tick away. The dial on this watch offers a very rich, deep sunburst blue that looks very nice, especially in the light. The minute track around the outside also appears to be like a very dark blue or possibly a black, so it does fade away in the darker tones of the dial. The crystal is a beveled, flat piece of sapphire. It doesn't appear to have any AR coating underneath or on top of the crystal, so that it is going to get some reflections in the light. So the dial is a very clean layout, and I really like that a lot. At the top, you have Tissot and 1853. Underneath the handset, you have the letters PRX. And at the bottom, splitting the 6 o'clock indice, you have Swiss on one side, made on the other. It's a very symmetrical layout. I like it. It's not cluttered whatsoever. At the 3 o'clock, you can see a beveled date window with a white date wheel. I would have much rather preferred a color-matched date wheel, or possibly even a black date wheel. It might not be a big deal to some, but for me, I would prefer a color-matched date wheel. The case is vertically brushed, and the bezel is this nice polish. I have a few fingerprints on there. And as you can see, I kind of scratched it there already. And I don't know if this is just easily scratchable, but I don't remember hitting that at all. Maybe I'll have to polish that out. Maybe it's just a little scuff. But the polished bezel, it looks very nice. Like I said, it's the contrasting finishes just really adds to the premium feel of the watch. Moving down to the bracelet here, at the case, it's 27.4 millimeters, and then it offers this heavy taper down to 17.6 millimeters at the clasp. And this watch does come with a very secure butterfly clasp. Just listen to how well it snaps in. This thing is not coming off. And there you can see the words Tissot 1853 on either side of the clasp. Balances out very nice. If you haven't seen my Brew Retromatic review, I'm going to pop up a link here. And one gripe I had with that was they only had Brew at the top and they didn't have anything at the bottom. So this actually bounces out the clasp. It's just more visually appealing to me. Let's pop open that butterfly clasp one more time. The clasp is just your basic clasp. It's not decorated at all. High polishing. There were so many stickers on here as well. So many like plastic stickers. So you're going to have to take all those off. There might even still be some here. Let me go ahead and actually remove a pin here. Speaking of the pins, they are just a standard friction pin. You just push it out with a pin tool and hammer. Now, one interesting thing about this bracelet is they offer quick release spring bars. And to me, that's kind of odd for an integrated design like this. So I assume that they're going to introduce some leather options or replacement straps in the future. Now, the case back is nothing special. You just have that radial brushing and the specifications around the outer rim. I wish they would have added a PRX logo or possibly a Tissot logo, something in the middle to kind of show off the design, and maybe they'll do that in the future in regards to an automatic version of this watch. The stick hands and baton indices are actually coated in a blue superluminova, and while it doesn't offer the best of lume, it is good enough for a everyday sports watch. I don't expect it to have the same lume as a diver or anything of the sort, but for what you need, I think it works well, and it should be enough for those low light situations. All right, popping it back on the wrist one last time. Once again, I have a 7.5-inch wrist, and I just love this thing. Just look at how it plays with the light. Nice and slow when you rotate the wrist. It looks very premium. You know what? It looks very much like a Zenith Defy Classic. That's a watch I've been eyeing for a very long time. So this is going to fill that need, or I should say that want, until I actually get a Zenith. But for right now, this is very nice. Like I said before, I have a 7.5-inch wrist, just for reference. And, I could wear it slightly looser. It is winter right now, so maybe in summer I'll have to take out a half link and insert a full link. But there are 2 half links that you can kind of get a good enough adjustment, I think. With a butterfly clasp, you usually tend to wear them a little bit loose just in case your wrist swells, but there it is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and flip that camera, and then I'll give you guys my final thoughts. So there it is, the Tissot PRX. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give a pros and cons list. Rumor has it that if this watch sells well, and I think it is with all the YouTube views that I've gotten from the unboxing, that they're going to release an automatic version of the watch. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. I don't know how it's going to affect the case shape and everything like that. But I'm going to add a little wish list as well. So let's start off with the cons, and the first one being that 3 o'clock date window. Now, I don't have a problem with the 3 o'clock placement, but I wish they would have color matched the date wheel with the dial. It just would have made it look sleeker overall, in my opinion. So the next con I have is really not necessarily a con, but it's also not a pro. And it's going to be that lume. I wish it would stay lit a little bit longer. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but if I'm gonna have to put the lume into one category, it's gonna slightly fall to the con side. Once again, not a deal breaker. I'm merely grasping at straws, trying to find issues I have with this watch. Now, the last con I have is going to be the butterfly clasp thickness. I don't know if I could be able to show you this. I kind of feel like Spider-Man here. Like, right there, you can kind of see that the thickness on the butterfly clasp, it just sits a little high. And I don't know if that has to do with the push buttons themselves. I don't know if they would eliminate the push buttons. It would sit more flush on the wrist. But it's just a little thick. It feels like a little hump there on the bottom of the wrist. Not a big deal, but once again, I have to give some cons. All right, enough of the cons. Let's move on over to the pros. And the first pro is going to be the design. Now, think about it. This watch design is almost 50 years old. What was made in the 70s that if you brought it forward to the 2020s would still be in style? Really nothing. Maybe some bell bottoms? I don't know. But the design is classic. It's timeless. And it works today just like it worked back then. And piggybacking off of the design of the watch is going to be the construction of the watch. And this is what blew me away. From the thickness of the watch, or rather the thinness of the watch, to the 100 meters of water resistance, the vertical brushing, the polished edges, the quality of the butterfly clasp. For $375, you have maxed out that quality factor when it comes to a Swiss-made watch. And that last pro I have is going to be the movement inside. And I know it's not an automatic movement, but the 3-jeweled quartz movement powering the PRX is still Swiss-made, offers a 5 to 8 year battery life, and has an end-of-life indicator, so you're never going to be surprised that the battery is running low. And speaking of that movement, I guess that's a good segue to go on over to the rumor mill. If they do include an automatic version of the PRX, a couple of things I would like to see done would be to include the Powermatic 80 movement, but try to keep the thinness of the watch under 12 millimeters. Now, I think the thinness of the watch really helps when it comes to that integrated bracelet, so I wouldn't want to sacrifice the wearability of the watch just to have an automatic movement. The next thing I would say would be to color match the date wheel with the dial. If you're going to make this a premium watch, you know, around $1,000, I think that's the bare minimum you have to do. And speaking of that dial, I'd like to see a few more color variants, possibly a burgundy or an olive, or even like a burnt orange or something along those lines, to give it that sporty, flashy look. But overall, the watch you get for $375 is incredible, and really the only other watch I can think of that offers that amount of watch for that little of a price is going to be the Bulova Lunar Pilot, which I have reviewed. I'll put a card up there. Amazing value. So it's something. I mean, the quartz, if you sacrifice the automatic movement for a quartz movement, you could put a lot of time and money into the rest of the watch, the case, the bracelet, the crystal, all that. Well, that's my review of the Tissot PRX. Go ahead and leave a comment below of what your favorite part of the watch is. Like the video, subscribe, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop up a couple of videos right here. I'm not sure what's going to be what. Go ahead and watch either of them or both of them. I would much appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one.